Welcome to the Metal Maniacs Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Ingersoll, and I'm here with my co-host,
Mod.
He's here. He's in the building.
I'm back.
He's back. What else would you expect? So today we have a very special guest, one of my good friends, somebody that's very near and dear to my heart, Jeremy McClary from the band Pain Divine and Snake Out, correct?
Yep.
So thank you for coming on the podcast. Really appreciate it, man.
Yeah,
For sure. Excited to be here.
Hell
yeah. Good
Hell
to
yeah.
have
You ever done a podcast before?
Not as cool as this.
Ah.
So we don't worry about those other ones.
The flattery
This
starts
time.
already, and that's why I said he's near and dear to my heart, because he just does that to me all the time.
Everyone needs a fluffer.
All right, man. So I'll let you know that. So Jeremy does play in a band called Pain Divine and Snake Out. We'll talk a little bit about that too, because I checked that out as well. But Pain Divine, cool shit, man. I went through the album a couple times. I listened to it thoroughly, like at work when I could really concentrate on it. And then last night I was doing a few things in here, just getting ready for the pod, and I put it on again. Cool shit. I would say for me, just as an observer, it's kind of. I know you got some new stuff, and we'll talk about that. But as an observer, for me, the first album, Without Compassion, correct?
Yep. First full length,
That to me was like a hardcore mixed with a touch of death metal. Am I correct?
Yeah. I would actually say, and so that album was written largely before I was even in the band. It was largely, that's kind of like chapter one of Pain Divine. So like that kind of took, like if you look at there's a like an EP and a split that were released before that. And really all Without Compassion is taking all those songs and mashed them together. But then there's a couple, like the actual song Without Compassion, I think Warren of Chaos. There's a couple songs that are only on the full length. But for the most part, it's really just like, let's take these songs that we've recorded like demos of or little, rougher recordings, and let's do it, full blast. And that. So, yeah, that honestly, like, I wrote some leads on there. Like, so when you hear, like, some of the leads, like, that's me.
Okay.
But beyond that, it's like,
He's
that
like,
was.
no responsibility.
Yeah,
not
but
my
no,
thing,
but it's like, it's funny how it worked out because I really wanted to be in paint. Like, I lived in D.C. for a while.
Okay.
And I could not find a band to save my life.
Right.
And then that was a part of the reason why I wanted to move back to West Michigan, because I just knew, like, hey, I know people here. Like, I could find a band, I could jam with some people.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
Pain Divine was like, They were a full band when I came back, and so I was, I'm not a home wrecker, I'm not over here trying to break bands up. But in my mind, I thought, God, like Bob is the other guitar player in Pain Divine. He and I are like musical soulmates.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Like he and I have been in
Friends
bands forever.
forever.
We were in Time of Plague back
Oh,
in
yep.
the day. Like
Yep.
it's just he and I it's like we just click. And
Mm-hmm.
we know how each other works. We know and all that. But like they had a full band, so I was like, that's cool. But I was trying to find something, and I'd go to their shows and support and just be a fan. But then they went to record this album, actually, and their other guitar player just dropped. He just, it's like, he couldn't commit that much. It was, there's
Sure.
money starts becoming a factor, and I respect that. And for him, he just wasn't, he was in a different spot in his life, and he just needed to step back. And that was perfect for me. I was like, I jumped in, Bob and
Ready
I
to
sat
step
down, we
in.
grinded. I learned the songs in like 2 weeks and tracked it, but we actually ended up recording that album twice.
Okay.
We recorded that whole damn album twice, which
Oh,
I
fuck.
regret it now. Honestly, like I wouldn't do that again. But like we worked with Addison Eilers over at Addison's Analog Time Machine.
Yep.
Awesome dude, like one of my best friends. Like I love that dude with all my heart. And like if you're in West Michigan, you want some good shit, like he definitely can get it. Like definitely like rock. He's in Tiny Tree.
Oh, yeah.
He gets all that stuff. But we recorded it, and he got all new interfaces, all new. It was COVID, right? So we're kind of stagnant, anyways. We're like, what are we gonna do? And we were like, well, why? And he was like, why don't you just come back and re-record it? Jeremy knows his parts better. Let's just get a better performance, better takes. And we did that. But honestly, I would have probably just I would have wrote new music. I think that would have been a better endeavor. But I'm still like the album sounds good. It sounds sick. I'm happy with it. But it's definitely like chapter one.
Right.
And then now like all the stuff we're doing now is like that's more of my contributions.
Okay.
Now
More
it's still like
influence.
it's me and Bob. Like it's not me writing it.
Oh,
but
yeah.
It's more
Yeah.
I'm helping write the songs. I'm giving feedback. All these songs were written when I joined. So
Right.
Without Compassion is definitely like their baby. But I would say their intention would have been that it's more metal with hardcore taste. But
Okay.
I appreciate what you're saying. Like definitely, I mean, we're all deeply rooted in like the hardcore scene and
Yeah.
hardcore music.
Yeah.
So
Right.
Yeah, to me, being familiar with Time of Plague, obviously, you know, to me it kind of just sounded like almost where that picked up where Time of Plague left off, just with a different drummer and a different, obviously, vocalist, and like, you know, I don't want to say better drummer because I don't want to offend nobody, but better drummer. And
no, Mike, here's the deal. Like,
I mean, he's solid as shit. I think his parts are great. They all fit good. He's not like trying to be super flashy, but he does everything that needs to be done, you know, and he fits the part. And what I like about you guys, and one thing that's driven me crazy about songs, and Nick and I have discussed this on this podcast and previous episodes, where bands don't write songs so much anymore, where they don't have callbacks and they kind of just do the riff soup, and then like almost every deathcore thing out, they're all badass, and I love to listen to them, but it's just like the vocalist rants from minute one over every note and then all the way to the end, whereas you guys, I've noticed you kind of have callbacks, you're writing songs, you're bringing riffs back, and I always appreciate that because that's what good songwriting's about. And that's one thing that Nick and I have tried to, with the music that we make and we have been making, we've tried to evolve into that. Instead of, hey, look what I can do, it's more like, hey, look, we can write a good song, right?
Yeah, you got to have a couple of riffs that you bring back. Otherwise, you're kind of wasting them. And if you feel that good about it the first time, bring it back the second time, maybe put a different beat on it, and that makes the song even better. Like
exactly. If it's a sick riff, why not bring it back halftime?
Yeah, exactly.
Bring it back double time and then halftime and then play it regular time again.
Right.
If it's a sick riff.
Yeah.
But I think that's mature. I think that's just maturity, right?
Yeah.
Like I think it's just you've done the thing, and trust me, there's times like we've got some new stuff. It could border on riff salad because sometimes, you know, and this is kind of getting away from metal a little bit. Like, you know, listen to bands like Knock Loose. You listen to Knock Loose, and it's just like 7 breakdowns after one another.
Yeah.
But the entire time, you just want to run through a wall.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's sick. But like, if it's always that, I think it can get a little like stale. Or you're like you said, if somebody's filling the vocal space nonstop, it's like it's okay to let the riff shine sometimes.
Yeah.
You don't always got to throw a lead over something. Like, just let it be a sick riff.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, I think a lot of it is just our having done this for a while, and honestly, so. Our singer, Ryan, he's also a bass player. I think that helps that he's a singer and a bass player. So he doesn't feel like he's not doing anything. Because when he's not singing, he's like ripping a sick bass line.
Yeah.
So he's fine with stepping back and just letting the part, because it's his part is shining, you know? And plus, he told me I needed to drop this. He does have a master's in music. So, like, you know, he knows more than everybody. So let's be clear. So that's Ryan, certified masters in music. He actually is. He teaches. He's like a band director in Kentwood.
Oh, okay.
That's awesome.
Cool. So tell us a little bit about, let's just start at the beginning, man. Like, what started your...
It's going to be a while.
We got a while. What started your love for metal, and how did you just get into it, and where did that kind of spark, you know? And then tell us a little bit about the progression of you getting into heavier and heavier shit, because I think it's all a progression, right? You kind of start at the Metallicas and Ozzies, and then you get into it. But what was the thing that kind of made you, you know, choose this path, and just because you got a passion for metal? That's why you're on the show, you know, with us.
So, like I said, I hope we have a while because it's been a while. So, I mean, honestly, it started like kind of like what you were saying. Like, my dad for sure is the one who like ingrained like my love for music. Because if you check out like what I listen to, it's crazy. It's like right now I'm listening to the new Dying Fetus. Those singles are so sick.
So good, dude.
So sick. There's like a part in there that's like it literally sounds like Chuck from Death wrote it. It just transitions into this sick lead. I'm like, anyway, but like Dying Fetus. But I could go from that to listen to Turnstile.
Right.
You know, I love Turnstile. I love everything. So my dad kind of fostered that in me. You know, he'd have, you know, a Black Sabbath CD next to a Belle Biv DeVoe CD next to, you know, Guns N' Roses and Queensryche.
Hell yeah.
So for me, my first favorite band was like Guns N' Roses, right?
Okay.
When I was like 4 years old, I was old enough to start to maybe like to think about or have an opinion, be like, I want to listen to that.
Yeah.
Like I love Guns N' Roses, and I think like watching those like hair metal videos or something on MTV, and like it subconsciously set in, like watching the guitar players and just being like, man, this is badass. Like guitar's badass.
Okay.
But just going from like Guns N' Roses, you know, my dad had like Ozzy CDs and Black Sabbath. He wasn't listening to Cannibal Corpse or nothing like that.
Right.
But you know, it started it. And then moving from that, like those little like Columbia House, BMG, you know, we all know that, you know, the scam of the century, you know. That was, but I was a child. That was on my dad, so he was the one who probably ended up paying $500 for 2 CDs. But still, so you know, just
32 cents, Dad.
Yeah,
That's what it says.
Man. But you know, it's just some different music than that. I had a really good buddy, Chris, was a neighbor. He was the one that would pepper in some, like he showed me older Metallica. I remember him showing me Ride the Lightning, and I was like, oh, this is cool. Or he like would show me like Cannibal Corpse, because he had an older brother, so that extreme stuff and just getting a taste for it. And at the time, I don't think I really understood Cannibal Corpse. I know I was like 8 years old, and I was like, I thought it was cool just because like a friend of mine was like, this is extreme, this is crazy. But I like that, and like he showed me Pantera, so that kind of helped me start to dig into that. And then actually through Columbia House somehow I got like a random magazine that had like a sampler CD that would come with it, and it was like I got like 6 issues for free or something. Oh, nice. And one of those it was around 95 when Domination by Morbid Angel came out, and it had Where the Slime Live on it.
Great.
And if you think about like an entry into death metal or extreme metal, like that's the song.
Oh yeah.
Because
that's glorious.
It's not that extreme, really. If you listen to that,
it's kind of slow. Yeah,
it's
not
groovy.
Yeah.
Like if you like that song, you can understand why Morbid Angel was on tour with Pantera. Like,
right.
Like it's groovy, it's heavy. Like the vocals are even clean in parts. When he does the little,
it's more speaking
chorus.
And that album itself too, I actually just listened to it the other day. That album itself too is a lot more palatable than if you go back and
even one album,
Blessed Are the Sick, or even Covenant.
Covenant compared to like Domination. Like
Domination was kind of like almost this. I don't even want to call it like a corporate Morbid Angel, but like they really had a polished style and sound at that time.
The production, was
production
next level.
Well, even compared to stuff after it.
Oh yeah, Formulas. Like I can't even listen to Formulas.
Like Formulas, they went the totally opposite direction and got really like avant-garde with like
I just
wanted to write the weirdest leads and like.
I don't mess with that album, but then if you get into like Gateways and then shit after that shit's all great again. So like Formulas kind of for me like put me off. I was like, oh, what are they doing? Like I can't even get through this album. And then as soon as I got back to Gateways, it took me a while to get back to it. And then I actually even listened the other day their newest one that came out in 2017, and that's a great record too. So like they've gotten back on their shit. I know they got shit for that that one that was like mostly electronic,
like
that old Dividum whatever, but I didn't really spend a lot of time with that. Letter I, because they all go in alphabetical order, basically.
Yeah, which is dope. But yeah, so definitely that's what like Morbid Angel, like Where the Slime Live, like hearing that and like wrapping my mind around that, I think it just opened up my mind to just more extreme music. And then from there, it's just friends and family. Like I had some cousins that were just into some like definitely the Roadrunner record stuff. Like at the time, like that was when Machine Head starts popping off, Sepultura. You've got. So I had cousins that were showing me like all the Roadrunner stuff. So honestly, like that's where I really sharpened my teeth, I would say, is like Roadrunner records. Like when you think about bands like I said, like Sepultura, Machine Head, Nail Bomb, just some of those bands. Like I remember just like that's what I listened to was if it said like the All Blacks, I remember like the distro for it, if it said All Blacks or Roadrunner, like I probably liked it or listened to it.
Same.
And then just from there, it's just like having friends and meeting people and discovering new things through that. And that's really, I mean, remember, this is before there was no Spotify, right?
Right, no internet.
Like I said, we got a lot of gray hairs in this room right now. So, like, for you younger audience members listening at home, like, we didn't just have Spotify to hop on. Like, I remember going to Circuit City with my dad, and I'd have to go. My favorite thing to do is to buy the comps, right? I could buy, like, the Century Media comps or the Relapse Record comps. And that's how I discovered bands like just extreme, like more extreme stuff. Like that's how I heard about God Forbid for the first time. They'd released that album Determination, and I listened to that. And like I had no idea who God Forbid were, but I bought that comp and I heard them, and I was like, "This is sick."
Yeah.
I'm drawing a blank right now. The bright lights are blinding me. But like that album Carnivorous Erection, it's on Relapse. It's by I'm a poser right now, but the album's called Carnivorous Erection. And it's just sick, grindy, like crusty death metal stuff. But like the stuff I listened, like it's just like the wildest things, like Pig Destroyer. The first time I listened to Pig Destroyer was on one of those comps.
Yeah. Okay.
And then it's just like you start to go like, and I'm just an obsessive person when it comes to music. So for example, right now, I was listening to this band called Innumerable Forms, and they're super sick. They're kind of like guys that are more like the hardcore scene, but they're like they love death metal and extreme metal. And like there was a description where it was like that they reference Finnish death metal, and I was like, I don't know what Finnish, like I was like, I feel like a poser. So I was like, what is Finnish death metal? So I've been listening to like Sentenced, and like so I've been digging into Finnish death metal, like old school Finnish death metal, to be like, well, what does that mean? But anyway, so just from there, just being in bands, meeting new people, like hanging out with Jay Ingersoll and being like, hey, like what, And there's so many bands that you've shown me, like Mod has dropped, like just that's what's awesome about being a musician and being a part of something bigger than yourself is I just feel like it's hard to get stale. Like you have to try really hard when you're in like a scene and friends. Yeah, you'd have to try really hard to be like, I just listen to the same I don't know, like these 5 bands.
Yeah.
I can't.
I
can't.
I know a guy like that.
Who's that?
I won't say his name on this pod, but I mean,
I know plenty of
this
people.
This is called the Beef Maniacs. We're out here dropping suckers.
Yeah,
hot takes. Hold on, red alert. Can we get edited in? Woo, woo,
No.
woo. Jay's hot take.
no, I just know that I know guys like that haven't listened to anything metal after like Pantera reinventing the steel. That was like the last thing that
Metal
was like,
died.
yeah, that's.
They were like, man, when Dimebag left,
Yeah.
I don't even care.
Yeah,
no
fuck
more.
Damage Plan. And
I
then
gave my
they're like-
energies to Dimebag and Pantera when he was alive.
A little
That's
bit of
all I listened to.
Slipknot, and it ends there, and then never kind of.
But they're not as good as Pantera to those fans. They're like, I like some Slipknot, but they're not Pantera.
I love me some Pantera.
I do too.
But
though.
oh, so how did you start playing guitar, and then where did that progress, man?
So like kind of like I was saying, like I was, like I said, I'm obsessive, so I was like really thinking about coming on here today, and I'm like, well, what are some things they might ask? And so
Your whole life story.
I realized that I'm like, I do think it was like watching like just the 80s hair metal type of videos on MTV growing up and seeing dudes like, because like in my immediate household there was no musicians. My parents were not musicians. Like I said, my dad loved music, but he wasn't like there was not a musical bone in anyone's body in the house.
I feel like you're telling my story, but continue.
Yeah.
It's so much me right now coming out
Yeah.
of your mouth. It's so funny to me because this is all the same for me. I'm like laughing inside. So if you see me laughing, it's not at you.
Man, Jeremy's family sucks.
Wow, it's
What
a
a bunch
terrible
of
story.
losers that didn't even understand how to play music.
Make sure you show this to your dad.
Big love, Pops.
the beef.
Here's Jay's hot take.
Hot
Your
take
dad's
on
an idiot because he can't play an instrument.
They didn't play music in your house.
But no, so like I think that combined with it just made me. I've always been interested in the guitar, and I just thought it was cool. And like, how does that work? And like, you can make a sound with it, and like, it just seemed like this mysterious thing. And like, just we kind of got tighter with some of our family that lived like up north, and my Uncle John actually played guitar, so that was like boom. Like that was, you take like my passion combined with like opportunity, right? And then I was able to sit down with him. Of course, I learned Smoke on the Water. That's what I had to learn, and I learned that. And he was like so impressed with how like I was actually like, a lot of kids when they're like 9 years old or 8 years old, they're not trying to sit down and play guitar.
Yeah.
But I did, and I might have been older than that. I don't remember. It's been a while. But he just from there, and then like I think him talking to my parents about like, well, this is what he needs to get started. So then they were always tremendously supportive. I mean, they bought me all of my gear up until I was. I mean, even when I was after 18, I remember them loaning me money to buy like a Mesa 412.
Oh, nice.
And then I just would pay them back, and I don't think R.I.P. Mom and Dad, because I don't think I ever paid you back. But, but
But you still like on the mission. You're still playing music.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like
it was a good investment.
Yeah,
it was a
exactly.
good investment. But so just I think having like a supportive parent, my parents supported me. Like they, I got lessons at Bierman's, in Muskegon.
Okay.
They paid for that. They
Yep.
were very supportive of playing music. They didn't. Honestly, the only thing they ever were like that where they were like gatekeepy about was like Marilyn Manson. That was like the only thing. Like they did not care that I had like Cannibal Corpse albums or stuff like that. But my mom thought Marilyn Manson. It wasn't even because he was offensive. She's just like, he's an asshole. I don't like that guy.
He's missing that rib.
And that was it. Yeah, he's missing that rib. What are you doing with that? That seems a little odd. But then right
Paul
next
from
to
the
it,
Wonder Years.
but right next to it there could be, right next to it could be Eaten Back to Life, and she'd just be like, "Oh, that looks weird." But like Marilyn Manson, no, get that out of my house. I can't. But they just were always supportive. I mean, we were talking before we started rolling, like they brought me to my first concert, Ozzy Osbourne. When I was like 9 or 10 years old.
Awesome.
To see Ozzy.
Hell yeah.
And so they were just having very supportive parents, and then just getting into it. And like I just loved playing guitar. I loved learning Metallica songs and playing along to the the songs and stuff like that. And it just meeting people from that point. I knew I wanted to be in a band and just starting a band, and from there I got lucky finding good band members and stuff, and it just kept it going. And here I am. Like there's been moments where like I've been like, I think I got this career now. Do I really have time to play guitar? Do I have time to do this? And then so there were times like I sold off that Mesa cab. I sold off all the gear. I had like a Fractal Audio Axe Effects. I had it plugged into my computer. I could write and record some stuff just for myself. I could learn some songs still. And I was content. I was like, this is what I am. Like, I'm never going to be in a band again. I'm never going to, I can't. I'm an educator by day. And I was like, I'll never be able to be in a band again. And that was partly because I lived in D.C. and not having that connection. But now, like, when I moved back to West Michigan, like, it just really, rekindled all that for me. Just being around people I knew and being back in that, like, comfort spot of being in the scene and just seeing people play music. And honestly, I think I'm more passionate about it right now in this moment than I've ever been in my entire life. So
nice.
It's cool. And that's to me what's cool about playing guitar. Like, the people I don't think I would have met Jay. I never would have met Nick if I didn't play guitar.
Right.
So to me, that's, like, the coolest shit about it is, like, the people I get to meet.
Absolutely.
Like I've become like Mutilated, the band I'm repping right now, the shirt I'm wearing, like, I've gotten to know those guys, and it went from them being one of my favorite bands just because they're so sick. But, like, I've booked them now. I've played shows with them. They've crashed at my house. Like, we become friends. Like, I just went and saw them at the Sanctuary in Detroit with Defeated Sanity.
Oh, nice.
And Stabbing and Throne. Shout out Throne. They're sick too.
Oh God, so badass.
Yeah. But Mutilated to me, like, they are like God tier. Like, there's bands that are local, but they're not a local band.
Are they from Michigan?
They're from Toledo, actually. They're from Ohio.
Okay, so close enough.
Yeah, they're on Redefining Darkness Records. They're super sick, super nice guys. But, seeing them, just, okay, so they go from being this band that I just really like. I booked them, played some shows with them, now hung out with them. And then now I see him playing with Defeated Sanity, and we're just hanging out, and we're like buds.
Yeah.
And, like, how cool is that? That's music. That's
right.
like, that's the point. Like that's success to me. Like that and that's why that's kind of like the biggest payoff for playing guitar.
Yeah.
That's what keeps me going.
Yeah.
Yeah. The keep it going thing is definitely big too, because I felt like I've had to, like, set those instruments aside, let them collect some dust. Just maybe they're ornaments now. I don't know if I'm going to play music again because you don't know if you got anything going on. Like you said, you're missing the connections or schedule. With work's a little bit more serious. You're grown, so you're trying to make, ends meet, pay the bills. Yeah, I've been down that road too. I feel like I relate to that a lot. I mean, even now, I don't put in the kind of time I would like because there's so much going on, but the passion is there for sure, and that's something that I don't think you lose if you're real about it. Like, you will never lose that passion. You will keep playing one way or the other. Like you said, you're just content to your room. Yep. You just sit there and play by yourself and write some riffs, and I'm fine with it. Till one day you're like, nope, I got to be on the stage. I got to be doing it viscerally, live, with friends, like, just emotive. And I think you just stick at it and you wait for the right people to come to you and not force it. I mean,
Well, I think too, it's complicated too. I just think when you get a little bit more seasoned, as we may be, like, I just, like, it's not about even being a snob or being better than. It's just, I think you get to a point where it's like, just a certain caliber. So then it does become more difficult. Like I can't just be in a band with anybody.
That too.
And not to be a snob,
true.
not like, oh, I'm better than you, but just like, I've already taken the lumps. I've already kind of paid the dues.
Mm-hmm.
I've gotten roughed up and I've gotten to where I'm at. And everyone's not to that point yet.
Right.
And so I think it's hard sometimes to sit in a room with people who it's just different. And so, I think it's just the more seasoned you get, I think it can be more difficult to find folks to click with, because it's you can't just, like, when you're 17 years old, you're like, I'll just go over to this dude's garage and we'll start ripping it. I don't care if it's nonsense.
Right.
But when you're like, I just think for me, especially to your point, Nick, like, it's just not, like, your time is more precious. Like, I can't just come over here and just, like, twiddle around and just make nonsense and then be like, I don't love it. Like, if you're not, because you are passionate about it. So if it's not something you're passionate about, you can't fake it. You can't be like, well, I guess, this is the only drummer I can hang, but the dude's, like, pretty rough. You're like, nah, I'm good. I'd rather just, like you said, I'll just sit in my office and write music and learn. I'll learn some songs. I'll start transcribing solos or something. Yeah. And instead of, because I don't want to waste my time.
Yeah, that's a big part of it too, is just finding the people that are absolutely passionate about it, no question, and they prioritize it as, like, their number one hobby and activity outside of everything else they have to do in life. That's a responsibility, and it almost picks up right there at the responsibility spectrum, because you treat it so seriously. You're like, you're almost on the verge of burning it out at any point in time, right? Because you take it so seriously.
Yeah.
And, so there goes, like, no, more variety now. So you're like, I don't want to burn out this one thing, so I'll play something different today.
Yeah.
So it helps you when you take it that seriously to kind of expand your musicianship and what you listen to. And you just reflect on the people that you hang out with. Who's gonna be in the band? It's got to be somebody you can relate to at this point. Somebody who takes it as seriously as you do, and it's like it's my first priority. When I wake up on Sunday morning, now it's this podcast, but also it's like band practice day, and I want to know that I have a band practice with people that are gonna be there every Sunday if they can be, and that's kind of where I want to get back to. And I was talking to Jay about this too, and I want to ask you. And you brought it up. You're an educator, and I knew that going into this. So you're working full time, and that's a lot of work outside of those hours too. I don't think people give teachers enough credit. Yeah. If you are in my world, you should know, or if you don't already, I'm a huge supporter of teachers.
Thank you.
All teachers and educators, they don't get the love and the props they deserve. I'm here to give them to you today, sir. Not just for your musicianship, but yes, kids need good, cool people like Jeremy in the classroom to help guide and steer them. So for that, sir, thank you. That's a lot of work, though. How do you find time to be in a band and keep up your craft on top of everything else in life? I mean, I got to imagine there's more to your life outside of work and music, right?
There definitely
is a lot of balance there. Tell me about it.
So, kind of like when I said with growing up, my parents being so supportive, it's like I've got the most amazing wife. Like, she is so supportive. And we're definitely just a strong team. So and she's like my ride or die. So like it's not like people will say like it's like, is your wife into it too, or is it kind of your thing? She's into it as like, that's I think what's helped me keep my passion going, because her and I we'll go to shows together. Like we go to Milwaukee Metal Fest, and she's like she's in the pit to Napalm Death. Our first date was Dillinger's Escape Plan, Every Time I Die at Club Soda in Kalamazoo.
Oh, wow.
And we're up front, and she's jumping up over me and crowd surfing. She is as passionate or more passionate about it than me.
Sounds fun.
And so she So having a wife that's supportive, I don't have kids, so there's trade-offs there, but, not having kids, I can kind of be the child, I can be like, you know what, I want to go out and watch these bands tonight, and I just kind of go do that. So that kind of helps that too, but definitely there's been times with work, I'll tell you right now, my leads aren't as sharp as I'd like them to be. I don't practice. I'm not sitting there running through the drills like I like to be. But what I'll do oftentimes, during the school year, is I will have guitar lessons. I take guitar lessons.
There you
still.
go.
So that makes me at least once a week. And then I'm the kind of guy that's accountability driven. Like, if I know I've got to meet with this dude in a week and go over some of the stuff we've been talking about, I'm not gonna slack on that. I'm gonna make sure that I'm doing my homework. And I'm warming up and I'm practicing. I'm going through it. But it, like you said, it's just passion. I'm in two bands. I go to shows all the time. Like last night, just went out to the Credit Union in Muskegon and checked out, Sawchuck and MDOP and a couple local bands over there. Some sick bands were playing last night. But it's just, I think, honestly, it's just having that supportive, home base. And then that just helps it keep it going, because there are times where I'm just like, this is ridiculous. I'm in two bands. I'm recording. I help record stuff sometimes. So I get overwhelmed with recording schedules, because it's and you guys can relate to all this, but it's not just I got to go to practice now. It's well, now I got to when the singer wants to come over and track vocals, now I have to be able to do that. And that's giving up time with my wife, or that's giving up time to do my job, or that's giving up time to do whatever. So this past week, honestly, there was a day, I think it was Thursday morning for Snake Out. Brett, the singer from that, came over. He recorded we started tracking vocals at 8 in the morning. We practiced from 8 to 10. I ran into work, went to the office, worked from 10 to 4 or 5. And then I left and went back home, and I tracked for Pain Divine. Ryan came over and we did vocals from 6 to 9, and that was the day. Yeah. And it's just it's like having a wife that understands that, and a family that understands it. She supports that. So she wasn't. I think there's a lot of spouses that could be like, oh hell no.
Oh yeah. Sure.
You're not you just did all that. You're coming home. You're doing this or doing that, or we're doing. And she's like, no, it's cool to get it done. I want you to get it done so you guys can get that album out.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I couldn't be luckier to have an awesome wife. Right. Shout out Beth.
Hell yeah.
You're my ride or die.
That's the thing about this pod, is the thing that I've been lucky to do too is, I've also I will say the local rap scene too. So how many people I know and I've met on both sides of the fence between all the metal stuff for however many years and all the bands that I played in, and Nick's kind of been there right along with me. But it's just man, them relationships are really the most important. Infinite Design kind of went by the wayside, right? It's I mean, it's still there. The music's there. We just put out the album, all that. But You know, I'm working on a
Which
documentary.
it rips, by the way.
Thank you.
Thank you for saying that.
We're putting together a documentary for it, and I did like some interviews, and that's the one thing we've all said. It's just like the cool relationships that we've been able to build. I wasn't able to meet you if I didn't record people or play shows, because remember I even recorded Time of Plague back in the day
right at the
or
start.
whatever.
Yeah, you recorded demo. You were there from the start.
Yeah, so it's like, you know, that's just my passion for music, and I'm hoping that with this podcast, you know, the music is a little few and far between now. I'm actually playing back with Iron Sharpens Iron. I took a break from that for a while, but that's just so I can get back on the stage. I'm hoping to do more things with Nick. We got a few things in the works too. You know, we're going to do some original music together, and we got some other projects, but none of them have really fleshed out at the time. But this was like, what is my passion? So I did the rap thing for a while, and I'm just like, a lot of that just seemed like I was always kind of like, for lack of a better term, just kind of like pushing against something. Like I'm trying to do something that it's not really me. Then I just kind of realized, like, I don't even really listen to rap music. Like, it's cool to make beats and charge people for studio time and try to sell beats and all that, but it just seems so unnatural. And then like I had this idea to, like, I listen to a lot of true crime podcasts, right? And then I had this idea, I'm like, why isn't there a podcast out there that does that for like bands, but like metal bands? So it's all based on this Metal Maniacs magazine, right? Because that was the magazine Nick and I grew up on, and they covered all the sweet fucking bands. It wasn't the hair bands and the Metal
stuff.
Edge and the Nirvana and all this shit that I don't care about, right? So I was like, let's just start a pod with that, and hopefully we can build this into something and create a cool community around it, and it gives us opportunities to sit down with you and other opportunities. Like, me and you we'll hang out and just bullshit anyway, you know. But like you said, we got to make more time for it, but not always is that the case. But it'll give us an opportunity to get our feelers back out there, and then, you know, it is what it is, you know. It's just one of those things that it's always in us. The passion's in us. So it's whether we're sitting here doing a podcast about metal and extreme metal, or we're on stage playing extreme metal. Like, that's just who the fuck we are. We can't deny that at this point. We can't fight that at this point.
It's not a phase, Mom. It's not a phase. This is who I am. I'm a weirdo that likes extreme music.
It's not going away.
I'll never fit in. Okay, it's okay.
Yeah, but I mean, right now it's thriving and better than ever. Like, you know what I mean? Like, just with the internet and so many bands out there, and
dude, it is, you know, so nuts right now. Yeah,
it's just
so
like
nuts.
Like we could sit here and just like name like 75 bands each, and just not even scratch the surface of like all the shit that we're like listening to or that's cool. So it's like, man, what a great opportunity for us to create content around that. You know, maybe we can't always make the music or make the music video or that, but we can talk about all this other content that people are putting out. So it kind of just puts me in a position where it's like, I still got a lot of work to do, because I got to edit the videos, I got to edit the podcast, I got to promote it, I got to have other people hopefully share it and get the word out there. And everybody has a podcast, but for me, this is totally non-outcome driven. This is like, I don't expect it. If 3 people listen to it, cool. If 3,000, that would be cooler. But I'd rather have 3,000 that fucking love this podcast and feel like they could be sitting here at the table with us. That's what's most important to me.
Oh, for sure.
You know, sometimes we get caught in these vanity metrics, and we want 4 million subscribers on our YouTube and all that. But metal doesn't work like that anyway.
No,
you need.
I don't work like that.
Yeah, you need your 50 dudes. You know what I'm saying? Like, your 50 dudes that like will eventually wear our Metal Maniacs podcast T-shirts and shit that we'll have. You know, so it's just that kind of thing. You know, and we've made enough connections, and you know, we know enough people, and dude, this has been our fucking life. We've studied this forever. So there's no imposter syndrome when it comes to this to me, because I've been a metal encyclopedia for fucking years. You know what I mean? It's like,
it's Sunday.
It's not work.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's a passion thing. So like, at the end of the day, like, if you sat down and did this for 2 hours in the morning, and you throw it together, you know, obviously the time to edit it and put it all together, but at the end of the day, you're like, that was fun.
Yeah,
right.
And then anything that comes from that is like the cherry on top.
Yeah,
it's like,
exactly.
hey, like if someone really likes this, and I get 20 listeners on that, and a couple comments on our Instagram or something, cool. And I connected with some more every episode, or there's one more person that I connected with, or maybe it's even your guest you bring in. Like,
exactly.
Like, and that to me, like, that exactly, you nailed it. Like, that is the point. Like, that's success.
Yeah.
Like, it's not about having I can quit my job now because I got so many YouTube viewers.
Right.
And, you know, I'm a Twitch streamer now and all this. It's like, no, this is just my shit. I'm just putting my life out there, and I'm just doing the thing that I want to do anyway. So anything that comes from it is just cool.
That's how I felt about our album dropping. You know, it was like I succeeded the moment that it was finished, and Jay was said, I'm not editing it any further. We're done. And I said, cool. That was success for me then and there. Like having it printed and in my hands was even better. Like the physical copy meant a lot for me to have, which I promised these dudes. I was like, as long as we see it through, like, and we have it printed, we will have it printed, I'd say. And then that was the success for me. I don't need to follow the numbers after that. I do appreciate anybody who listens to it and likes it, takes the time. I mean, we put a lot of work into it.
It's sick, and it shows. Like,
I love it. I love it so much myself. As I like listening to it, that was the real success moment, just that I enjoyed what I was doing. And, this podcast, people say things to you all the time. You should do this, that, or the other. And I've heard that sort of thing, too, before. You should do a podcast. And, but when Jay, my friend, who wants to do a podcast too, says, hey, dude, let's do a podcast, I immediately jumped on that. Why? Cool, because now I get to hang out with my friend every week, and he's bringing in a friend or a guest to talk about music, something that we do pretty much nonstop throughout the week anyway. So I'm just kind of like, this is natural. This is easy. I can do this. Like, I can wake up in the morning and be excited. I already worshipped at the altar of music this morning. Like, I'm listening to The Pain Divine. I was listening to Malevolence, Dillinger Escape Plan. I listened to a couple other heavies on the way up. I forget everything. I did get a chance to listen to some Silosis, which we talked about last time.
Yeah.
That was sick.
Yeah.
Silosis are cool.
Yeah.
So it's just, and
metal as fuck, bro.
Yeah, you wake up and
like metal. That's a metal band.
Yeah, metal.
That's all I wanted to do today was metal. I had it on my
metal.
mind last night before I went to it. I was like, podcast in the morning. Let's fucking go, fam.
Yeah, that's why I was like I said, I was cranking those Dying Fetus singles all the way here because I was like, I gotta get in the zone.
Hell yeah.
And metal's one thing, we've all known people who listen to metal, right? But it's not really fucking metal, so it takes a certain kind of individual to be listen to the bands that we listen to,
Well, you said this isn't Hit Parader.
Right.
This is Metal Maniacs.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
this isn't Mudvayne.
Right.
Which shout out to Mud.
I fucking love
yeah.
LD50 is God tier.
Yeah.
Everything. I'm not going to talk about anything else they've ever released, but LD50 is God tier. But yeah, like this is. I mean, Marduk's on the cover of that magazine. Like,
Right.
what?
Oh, yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah. So, I went to the Upheaval Festival with a buddy. He gave me a ticket. So, like, those are like kind of like the metal listeners. Even though Lamb of God played and that was cool. Everything
sick
else
live
was
band.
Everything else was like great. They all put on good shows, but it just kind of like that's metal too, right? But that's not the metal that
that's
we're
what people
here to
call
talk about.
metal.
Right?
It
You know what I
the same
mean?
way. Like,
exactly. And there
was
were some great bands. Like Dayseeker really impressed me, and that's not necessarily like my thing, but like the singer was great, and then like Memphis Mayfire played, and like
they were good.
They were great. Sounded amazing. I'm just not going to put on Memphis.
You can
Mayfire.
appreciate it.
Exactly.
You can stand there and watch them and be like, "This is cool."
Yeah.
But that's not the thing that gets you fired up.
Exactly.
And when you go to lift or when you go to run or
It's
when
the
you're
Dying
driving
Fetus.
home, you're not putting on Memphis Mayfire. You're putting on
Fetus and Fury, fucking badass bands. Like I've been on an Inferi kick since we talked about him last week.
Inferior dope.
Yeah,
Inferior dope.
But
I love that band too.
Yeah, so like I said, I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you talking metal with us. Let us know a little bit about just kind of your band, Pain Divine, like how that progressed. I know we talked about it a little bit in the beginning, and now that you're in the band, so you kind of what were some other bands that you were in? You were in Time of Plague, right?
Time of Plague. I've done some stuff here in like the hardcore world. Like I've dabbled or like we were in a band called Beyond Hatred that I helped get started. Like that
because Larry was part of that too.
Yep. He was in Infinite Design. He's on Sharpens Iron. Yep. Like so I've always been a metal guy. Like that's like I said, I told you like Morbid Angel. Like I was like 10 years old. Domination came out and like I'm already like, okay, this is me.
Hooked in early.
But I think I've always been the hardcore stuff. Always came. It was almost necessity because I do feel like in Muskegon and West Michigan in general, there's always like there's been like the metal scene, there's been the hardcore scene. But to me, the hardcore scene almost always called to me more, just because it felt much more expansive. Maybe like in West Michigan, the metal scene I felt like has always kind of been like. All we really care about is playing this show at the bar in town, and we're gonna do that, and that's what we do. And there never felt like there was a lot of new blood and new people. Like I said, meeting new people and like expanding yourself. With the hardcore scene, it felt like, oh, there's this band coming in from Boston playing, or there's a band from Texas coming up and playing, and that vibe of like kind of feeling like it was a little more like quote unquote real life. Like it felt more like, okay, like these are like there's this band coming in that's like. They're like a major band, but they're like a hardcore band. Whereas metal, it never really felt like that. And so, and plus in Muskegon, I know this podcast isn't for Muskegon, but there's a venue called the Ice Pick in Muskegon that's just legendary and historic, and that was it was punk. And so it's just out of necessity, I think, and just being younger, getting into music, I couldn't go to bars and watch, these bands play. Like, I would have loved to watch Enrapture, but they were playing bars.
Yeah.
Although sometimes Enrapture did play the Ice Pick, but it just seemed like for me the hardcore punk scene was more accessible. I could get into it. I knew these people were and I was like the oddball. I was the metal guy. I didn't know any of these other metal dudes. I felt like maybe they were older or doing different things, but I forget my point. But I'm just it's the hardcore things always. But anyways, you're asking me about like bands that I've been a part of. So like the hardcore stuff's just kind of been in this. It just kind of came on. But I love hardcore, not as much as metal, but it's up there for being a passion. But I've done the Time of Plague thing was like the first band I did that I think was like a success. I would say like it was legitimate. The songs were good. The shows were good. People liked us. We could play in Traverse City and people know our stuff.
Sweet.
However, from there it was kind of like I'd say it was pretty stagnant for a minute. Like trying to a lot of dead ends. Like find this band. And then you find out someone isn't on the same level as you passion-wise or, like, interest-wise, or they're just not the same caliber of musician maybe, and so it falls through. Or, I remember I tried filling in for Infinite Design once upon a time, and it just was like, at that time it was just, like, over my head. Like, I was like, this stuff is, like, ripping. And I just wasn't there yet. I wasn't there yet.
Fast.
And so and so it never really clicked, and then, like, it just, a couple things here and there. And then, like I said, I think it's partly because Bob's like my musical soulmate. So me and him reconnecting in Pain Divine, it's just like boom, it just fits. It's perfect. It makes sense. So honestly, since Time of Plague, I don't feel like I had a relevant band. Since Time of Plague.
Well, that's cool because at least like now that your passion has been, re-energized and now that you're really back into it, what greater time to be in a band that's doing shit? Because I looked at your Instagram. You guys have played quite a few shows, more shows than I was even aware of. I've seen you play with a bunch of different bands and stuff. So that's really badass, man. I'm really glad to hear that. As far as this band goes, now what are we working on? So we got the album that was you weren't a huge part of it, but you kind of came in and added your little salt and pepper on it. You did your little thing. And so you recorded that band with Addison at Analog both times?
Yeah, so the first time I had just joined. So when I jumped in, we were tracking with Addison. That's how I met him. I didn't even know who Addison was. Well, I knew him from being in If He Dies.
Oh, yeah, he was in Dies. And I've known Addison for a long time.
But I didn't really know him. Like he always, to me, like I was like, he kind of moved to the area at a weird time, and like I never really knew who he was.
You didn't really know Ethos then?
No, I remember seeing them at some bar, but like I didn't know him like that. Like it was kind of more like I was like, oh, that's a cool band, but I wasn't like a diehard fan or like I know who they are. Oh, they're playing a show.
Yeah, we played with them a bunch of times. So,
but that was like I think it just kind of to Nick's point. Like I like kind of that was when I was deeper into some college stuff and like my schedule was just overloaded. I probably lived in like Grand Rapids at the time, and so it just was. I was out of touch with stuff.
That was too for a while. Kalamazoo, I was doing college. I was not doing music anywhere near what I wanted. Just sitting in my room, playing my guitar, writing my riffs, and then just keep it to myself. One day we'll see where it goes.
It was almost more of a hobby at that point.
Yeah, exactly. It was a huge hobby, though. I would drop everything just to sit in my room and play music for hours. So
for sure, but it wasn't something you were necessarily doing as like you kind of said as a responsibility. Like it was all because you just wanted to do it. And when I have the time, I'm going to sit and riff.
Yeah, it was the only thing I wanted to do outside of work and school. So,
for sure,
but no other people involved really.
Yeah, just doing your own thing. But then, so, I met him. I met him, and we just nerded out. Like he is like such a good dude, and like just easy to work with, and he wants to he's got a passion for it. Like when it comes to record, like he'll sit there and break down. Like I remember talking, we were setting up mics on the drums, and he's like stopping and taking out a pad of paper and drawing to me like the waves, and like he's like well, see, this is what it does, and he's drawing, he's like omnidirectional and you blah blah blah, and he's like drawing out diagrams of like how the microphone works and explaining why he's using what on what part of the drum set, because he wants to get, oh man, I really want that snappiness of that snare, so I'm going to do this and do this. And he was like and it wasn't like he was taking an hour to do it. And I'm like, oh my god, dude, shut up and move on. But it felt very natural. Like we were just nerding out over gear. And
nice.
He's like an electronics whiz. Like I'll bring him my 5150, and he'll just pop the thing open and just start reflowing circuits. And he's a genius. I mean, he's got an RCA tube tattooed on his hand, and he's got electrical diagrams on his knuckles. Like he's a certified lunatic.
Yeah.
But
Tech
super
whiz.
good dude. Like I consider him one of my best friends, and so. But that, like, to your point, that's music. That's the point.
Yeah.
Like, talk about. I never wouldn't have met him, but I went to that session. We recorded, and we became almost best friends. And we've been tight since then. I've helped him track some bands. But yeah, so we did that. Recorded it. He had a whole different like interface. He had some different mics. He didn't have acoustic treatment. It was a little bit rougher, but he was working magic with not a lot. But then he moved it to his new spot, and we did a lot of acoustic treatments. He got a couple new interfaces, some better converters and things like that. And we kind of just learned a lot in that time doing some different things. And like I said, I had just joined the band. So I'll be honest, if I probably listen back to that very original recording, I probably flubbed some notes. I probably am a little bit flat or sharp in certain, like I'm like, oh, I messed that riff up. But so we just re-recorded the whole thing. It was, and like that was, I was able to throw that salt and pepper on there, like some of those leads that I was able to write once I was in the band.
Yeah.
A couple things. So then we went from there and we re-recorded it. And like I said, it's sick. It sounds good. We had an awesome album release. But now it's like it's natural, right? Like this new stuff, I've actually had my fingerprint on. Like I've actually helped write it and craft it and to be a part of it. So naturally, I'm obviously gonna be more stoked on it.
Yeah.
Because this is this is part of me.
Right.
Now it's not me just playing someone else's riffs. It's me.
Yeah.
This is mine.
Yeah.
I've got my name all over it, and so just super excited. We're recording. We just recorded with Colin at 19 Star Studios in Northwest Indiana. Super good dude. He's in a band, Infamy, Days Lost. He was in a band called Purgatory, but he's a super good dude. He's been doing it for a while, but he's just now kind of blowing up. I know he's working with D Block. He recorded a band called Enervate from Milwaukee. They're a super sick Milwaukee hardcore band. Like if people haven't checked out Enervate, they should. If they haven't checked out Infamy, they should. If they haven't checked out Days Lost, they should. All these bands are super dope. And he just like sometimes there's people that get it.
Yeah.
And they just got like a Midas touch, and like this dude, I feel like he gets it, and like he really clicked well with Mike, our drummer, which I think is hard sometimes because I think drummers get so fed up with hearing a guitar player tell them what to play.
Yeah.
Or giving them feedback, and I'm over here playing drums on my chest or something, and it's like, dude, shut up. Like, what are you talking about? But having a drummer being able to talk to him, I think that just helped a lot. So we're really stoked, and hopefully by the time the podcast drops, hopefully people are listening to that EP. It should be out by then. We got a little surprise cover on there for you hardcore fans. You'll dig it, but it's definitely, it shows our influences. I would say there's definitely it leans more death metal. Mm-hmm. Like our name comes from Morbid Angel's song, Covenant.
Right. Yeah, Pain Divine. Yeah,
from Covenant.
Yeah,
right.
And so like we've been intentional about we definitely we love hardcore music. There's not a secret.
Right.
But we definitely wanted to lean more into death metal and have the hardcore parts or hardcore influence show up more like how old Suffocation would.
Yeah.
Right? Like death metal and hardcore have always gone hand in hand.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I mean, like there's no Suffocation if you don't have some sick ass like New York hardcore bands that they're listening to and jiving to.
Oh yeah.
Right.
It's all married. I mean,
yeah, for sure. And so we just definitely are leaning more into the death metal stuff, but you can hear there's breakdowns, there's heavy parts, you can hear that hardcore influence. But and here's the funny, there's a song on here on the EP that definitely has some death influences, and Death is a band to me, like this is my poser moment. I never understood Death. I never understood. Jay.
This podcast ain't coming out.
This guy. No. But here, I'm gonna redeem I will redeem myself. So for the longest time, like people that I really look up to, and I look up to Jay. I really respect him as a musician, his passion, the things he's always done, and he's loved that. Like Death is. I don't want to speak for you, but favorite band. All time, there,
it's
top
right
5?
up there. Oh yeah,
Top
it's
5?
right up there. It's
top
hard
3,
to say
top
like
2.
favorite band, but I mean to say
huge
that
influence.
Yeah, I mean Sculpted.
You've always
everything.
carried the flag.
Oh,
You've
yeah.
always been
Oh,
like
yeah.
Death is the shit.
Same.
And like Dan Wheaton, same thing. He loves it, and like I've always respected Chuck, and I've always respected what Death does. But I was always kind of like, I think you had to be there. I don't know. I don't really get it. but in the past year, like they're my favorite band. Like straight up, not even
That's
like
wild.
I like them more, but like Leprosy by Death, that might be my favorite album of all time. Like that out, like, and that's what's wild about this stuff is like, all of a sudden they just clicked for me. Like I was honestly, I think it was even like last winter or last summer, I was snow blowing or mowing, And I said, I can't keep living my life as a poser. And so I said, I'm just gonna put it on from Scream Bloody Gore, and I'm gonna listen to the whole discography. I'm just gonna listen from Scream Bloody Gore to Leprosy to Spiritual Healing, Human, Symbolism, Symbolic, like just going through it, and I love like Death, like they're like, and so there's definitely some like Death influences on here, but like, I mean, what else can you say about Chuck? Like the dude was a genius. Yeah. And like kind of what we were saying earlier, like the dude could rip, but sometimes you just gotta let a riff shine. Yeah. Like, and like to me, like there's so much you can learn from like the songwriting in Death. When you listen to that, it's like everything is so intentional and so purposeful, and like the structures are there, and it's never riff salad. Even if it becomes like, even when they get into the proggier territory, it's always about the song. It's never about like, let's just go on an 8-minute bass riff. Yeah. It's like it'll be in there. We'll have some. I mean, Steve DeGiorgio. And then the dude's surrounded to Death. It's just like, oh my God, the talent there.
Yeah. And then it comes back around. He'll always pull the song back together, and that's what I liked about it, because they could go off on a little tangent or whatever and get musical for a little bit, but then it's like, all right, guys, come back over this way, because this is where we got to wrap this up.
Yeah.
Tell the second half of the story here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But for sure, like, I mean, but that's kind of then the progression. I think there's no way like a band like Pain Divine will never have. It'll always be straddling the lines of death metal and hardcore, because like Mike the drummer and Ryan the vocalist bassist, like they were in a band called Damages, and it was a pretty, definitely successful at the time. Like they were very established. They did a lot of stuff, and they're a straight up hardcore band. I mean, definitely like and when I say hardcore, I don't even mean like Hatebreed hardcore. I mean like real hard, like American Nightmare, like real hardcore stuff,
like old school hardcore.
Yeah, and so he, they like, that's just who they are, and but they also love Morbid Angel. They also love Cannibal Corpse. They also love all these sick death metal bands. And Bob, same thing. Like Bob's the guy. Like Bob, we were talking before the podcast. White Zombie and Ramones in Muskegon. He's this dude that loves Hatebreed and loves death metal. But then the Ramones, he loves the Ramones. He loves surf rock. Yeah. So we're always gonna have those little flavors coming in, because like we're not just listening to straight up like, all I listen to are blast beats.
Oh,
That's it. We listen to all this stuff. So it's funny because Bob really seems like a pretty straightforward dude as far as his musical taste. But then, we have stuff in our songs that have like there's definitely surf rock parts, but it just sounds like that. It sounds like an ambient, maybe even black metal, but it's he's drawing all that from surf rock.
Yeah. Right.
Or Danzig, like stuff like Danzig, stuff like that, where it's like there's some, but somehow he plays it and he turns it into death metal, Nice. So, that's where we're at now, but, we'll see where we go. Like, our rule in our band is as long as we think it's sick, we go with it. We don't put on an arbitrary, like, limiter of, like, well, we got to have a breakdown, or we got to have more blast beats.
Right.
If
it's
anything,
just whatever comes.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I would say this new EP, we've been intentional about being like, let's be more focused on writing 6 songs.
Yeah.
And let's be more focused on, like maybe not always being so fast, because like that album, like if you listen to Without Compassion, like it's pretty fast. Like it's like, and when you see us live, it's like Mike, it's just like a blur. Like he's just blasting all the time. And so but like on the same, that's not what makes a good song. All that you gotta have a little bit of give and take. Like you can't just blast for 3 minutes and be like, cool.
Yeah,
that
you
was
gotta,
sick, right?
You gotta relieve the tension. You gotta, push and pull of music. That's all part of it.
I mean, unless you're Origin, in which case, it's sick.
I mean, that's what
sick.
You are. Yeah.
But it's like, there's more to us than that. And like, and if I'm being honest, it's like, I'm not Origin. Like I'm not. Yeah. Like, I'm not. Even like I've been talking about Dying Fetus a lot. It's like I love Dying Fetus, but I'm like, you listen to this, I'm like, I'm not like I'll never play that. Yeah, I'll never really play that. That's beyond me. Like, and like I'm not, and I never want to be that guy that's sitting there batting above my average. Like I want to, like I'm comfortable with who I am, and I want to play the riff that just it hits. Yeah. Not play the thing that like might sound cool, but it's sloppy as hell.
Yeah, that's part of all the progression too. You know what I mean? Just kind of letting it breathe, kind of knowing where you're at. And sometimes it's okay to play a little bit above, but we were there too. We were like, we wanted to be the fastest, heaviest, craziest. Yep. And it might not always been the tightest or always been exactly note for note the way we wanted to play it. So we've kind of pulled that back in the recent years, and that's just all about the progression of of metal. So
after recording so many albums so many times, not that we did a whole lot of that, but you learn like less is more. Like, it could sound like death metal. It can have the same intent, and you can, like, play it differently just to play it cleaner and then just to really nail it. And I think that was the intention with the last album, too. It's like, it has the attitude of everything else Infinite Design has ever done, but it was just like, more focused musically in ways where you didn't do anything for any reason. You were just like, and here, I feel like we were going to kick the tempo or the beat up, and then we're going to drop it down, and then we're going to, do the callback after... this chorus, that we didn't even know what they would be at the time. We didn't have lyrics at the time, but we would say, okay, and this is basically the halfway point where we're going to come back to the intro or the verse again. But yeah, you had to focus on the songwriting.
Yeah,
I mean, you can still like your style of music, but songwriting really, for me, at the end of the day, is going to be the difference between me listening to your album maybe like one time and just like going through that murk, like, oh, it's all riff salad, it's all riff soup, versus me like, oh man, that's really hooky. I've got to put it on again today. I'll wake up and say, yep, I have that in my head, and I'm immediately putting it on in the shower. So
well, and that's kind of where we're at. I'd say the new Pain Divine EP, like it's the title is Worthy Adversary. It's the Worthy Adversary. That's the name of the EP. So like that's kind of like what you just described, Mod, was like that's it. Like that's kind of what we want it to be we want it to be a release that people like just keep playing it on repeat. And they don't mind that it's only 5 songs, and they'll just keep repeating it.
Yeah,
because it is like it's funny because it like we've been talking a lot about finding musicians and finding people you click with and finding people you trust, and I really truly feel like in Pain Divine, like I've got that. It's like I've got the like I don't know, like the Holy Grail. Like I've got these guys that like I trust them all. I know they're gonna play sick parts. I don't have to worry about like I'll be honest. There's a song where like one of the riffs, it sounds like it could be on like Metallica Black Album. Like it sounds like that. It's like it doesn't. When you just hear the riff by itself, it doesn't make you think of like death metal. But somehow, bringing the riff to the band, throwing drums on it, throwing another guitar part on it, throwing the vocals on it, now it sounds like Morbid Angel.
Right.
And I think that's the hard part because I think sometimes, and I think that's what technology is cool. If I'm just writing a riff in my room with nothing else to it, let's just be honest. There's a lot of cool riffs that sound stupid by themselves or sound corny by themselves. But when if I can write that part but have like a drum beat underneath it already because I've got some drums programmed here in my DAW and I can write to the drums, I feel much better because I'm like that does fuck. That is sick.
Yeah.
Like that's a cool riff.
Sure. Yep.
But if you just hear it by itself, you're like,
what is that?
Is that like, are you trying to play like some Deftones or something?
Right.
Like what the hell is that? But it's like, no,
Yeah.
this is heavy.
Yeah.
And I just think also embracing some technology and being able to hear like maybe you can flesh your vision out a little bit more so you have that confidence. But I think it's just trusting the people you're working with and just knowing that at the end of the day, if you're not trying to be something you're not and you're just writing what feels good and you're like, I fuck with that. It's like you guys have been saying, like we're encyclopedias. Like we've been doing this our whole lives. Like I don't need a fact checker. I don't need someone to come and tell me like that's sick or that's not. Like I know what death metal is. I know what extreme metal is. Like I am it.
Yeah.
And so whatever I do, and this is not to be cocky or like I am that, but I've lived this stuff. I know it. I don't need validation from someone else. Like, I know this riff is sick, and if I think it's sick, then it is sick.
Yeah. then it goes back to it goes back to what Nick was saying though too. Is like sometimes less is more. Just because you're doing less. Then when you start adding all the layers, then it becomes what it is. Like, but if you were like, hey, watch these 4,000 notes I can put together, then like everybody else is like, what the fuck do I do over that?
Yeah,
that makes no sense for me to get in there anywhere.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at it like that, it's definitely layers. The question is, so what does that writing process with all the guys look like then?
So, like I said, I would say me coming into the band has evolved a little bit. We've actually developed. I think it's a good system. So like I said, I've got basically a full studio in my house. Like I do there, like when, like for Without Compassion, that album, like I tracked everything and Addison was like the editor and mixer and did that stuff. But as far as the drums, the guitars, the bass, the I tracked it all.
Nice.
And he definitely with Addison's help, like there was definitely like, he was my, like, let me give him a call. He's my support center. Like,
right.
Dude, like I'm getting some phase issues or I'm having some things like this. And he would come in and he would help me with or answer questions. And we did some reamping and he helped me with that process of reamping. But, so we have a setup right now where we've got like Mike, our drummer, he has a really nice Roland electronic drum set. And I've got a couple pieces of electronic drum set gear. So I have that right in my office. And then what I will do mostly the riffs come from me and Bob. Like me and Bob write the riffs. So he has an idea, I have an idea, whatever it is. He and I will get together and hang out, and we'll track it. We'll set the tempo, we'll set the click.
Okay.
And we're basically making our scratch tracks as we go.
Okay.
And so we'll do that. And then what we'll do is then we'll have Mike come over and Ryan come over, and they'll come over and we'll just listen to it, and Mike will write some drum part. We'll just write the drum parts. And then we can then chop and screw it kind of, right? We can cut and paste and be like, well, let's try this part. Like we don't have to play it 10,000 times. We can just be like, that's cool, but let's see what it would sound like if it came before that part. Or then we can just quickly be like, well, hold on, let's play this now, Mike. Like play it halftime there instead. And so we just kind of flesh it out that way. And Ryan's over there kind of just noodling on his bass and like figuring out what he wants to do. Like, is he going to keep it straight and just like accent some root notes, or is he going to throw some leads in there? Is he going to throw some fills? And like, what is he going to do? And so we kind of, that's how it really fleshes out now. So and then I can bounce the tracks to everybody. We can listen to them. We can be thinking, like Ryan thinks about lyrics with it. He can use it to map out his lyrics. But that's more or less what it looks like. So it really starts with me and Bob having some riffs and some ideas, and we sit down and just jam them through. And once we feel like we have a song or it's mostly there, then we'll sit down with the rest of the band and they'll bring their parts. I've dabbled with some things like trying to use like Guitar Pro to like tab stuff out. I can't wrap my mind around that. Like there's bands that we're friends with and they are like, yeah, like I don't even play guitar. I go on a Guitar Pro and I write it all. Like the drummer will like write music in like Guitar Pro, and I'm like, that I can't even wrap my mind around that because I'm like, that just seems wild. Like you're just like punching notes in the thing and like that's gonna be the song. But that's wild to me. Like I can't wrap my mind around that. But definitely just sitting down with Bob and we're hanging and we're riffing and we track the stuff. It's been a help because when we recorded the EP, we already had a 6 scratch track ready to go. We already had demos of all the songs that were like, they sound good. Like it's something you can put on in your car and you're like, I don't mind listening to this over and over again to figure it out and analyze it.
Yeah.
And we try not to overthink stuff. Yeah. I'm an overthinker. Like I will sit there and be like, well, I don't know. What about this?
Yeah.
We don't do that because you don't want to over massage something either. It's like things like if it was sick when you heard it, it's sick. Like don't overthink it now and be like, well, I don't know that part. Yeah. Well, now you've heard it 1,000 times. Yeah. No one else has heard it 1,000. Like you're overthinking it.
Exactly.
So kind of just trust it. But that's really the process. It's I'd say it's kind of a blending of old school and new school, right? Like we have the technology, we have the recording software, which is nice. And then then when we had them all, we had these songs ready to go. We went down and tracked them with Colin down in Indiana, and he, there were some parts we fleshed out a little more when we were down there. But for the most part, that's not what we use studio time for. We're down there to just
intentional
do our performance. But
you're paying.
But we definitely, there was some input. Like we're not above input. We don't treat this stuff like it's precious either.
Yeah,
it's like
you can't.
At the end of the day, if there's a better way to play it or a good idea or someone's input, like I'm gonna take it. Not because I'm like, I care what you think, but I have humility. Like I know that I'm not the best or the greatest. So if someone's got some feedback, I'm going to listen to it. And if I hear it and I think it's cool, then I'm going to roll with it and be like, that was a really good idea. Thank you for throwing that in there.
Especially if somebody was looking out for you, not themselves. Like you could just tell like that person's coming at you with like, hey, with respect to your product and your outcome, have you considered this? And if you're getting good feedback, then that's a person that you're going to want to look forward to working with.
100%. Like Colin, that's the thing. Like he ultimately was just throwing ideas out there because it wasn't because he wanted to be the producer. And I almost had to tell him, like, dude, feel free, like, let the ideas flow. Because I think sometimes people don't want to disrespect you. Or don't want to feel like
it is your art.
Your song sucks, man. Like, play this. And it wasn't that it was just, like, good feedback. And, like, at the end of the day, like, to me, that whoever is recording it, they're a part of the project, too.
Yeah, they're like now a part
their name
of
is
the
on
band.
it.
Yeah.
Well, also, this from recording. Like, sometimes it's like, what is going to be best, sound the best might not be the best the way it's written either. Because you can't force shit sometimes because when you're thinking about the mix, you also got to be thinking about how the parts fit together because some frequencies and stuff like that all take up things. So, like, that input from the producer is important. Yeah. So you guys don't do like full-fledged band practice then, or is that like before? Okay.
We do. So what we do basically is like we practice at our drummer Mike's because he's got his kit.
Is that
set
like
up
a once a week?
Usually once a week.
Once every other week.
It's usually once a week. We're steady once a week.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like if we're gearing up for something, we'll load up a week.
You get them in there.
We'll get more than one in a week if we need to.
Get tight for that show.
Especially just because there is some stuff we're playing that's technically challenging sometimes, especially drums. Like Mike is playing some nuts stuff on the drums. Like his stuff is just, like you said, kind of alluded to earlier. It's not even disrespect to anyone else. Just Mike is a sick drummer.
Yeah, he's good.
Like he's the real deal. He's a sick drummer. and like, so, but that means he's got to have it tight. He's got to have it rehearsed, and he practices on his own. He's in a couple other bands, and he does play a lot of drums, but there's no replicating just ripping with your band.
Yeah.
So sometimes we might stack up more than one a week, but generally we'll practice once a week. The other stuff, like me and Bob getting together to go over riffs, like that's just like, hey, dude, you want to swing over today
You got
after
some
work
time
and we'll hang
on
out and let's
Friday or whatever.
Let's
Okay.
do it. Or it might even be at practice. Bob will show me the riff he wrote. I'll go home and track it, and I'll start getting it lined up to the grid and lined up to the click, and I'll get the layout there, bounce it to everybody. How's this sound? I fuck with that. That's good. That's cool. That sounds good. Cool. We've got, and kind of that hardcore ethos. I don't want a long drawn out song. To me, like, we're the kind of band, like, a 20 to 25 minute set is more than long enough. No one gives a fuck. I don't want to watch your band play for 40 minutes. I just don't.
Yeah.
Unless like, no, truly though, unless
you're not lying, fam.
unless you are, because there's even bands I love. I don't want to watch you play for fucking an hour. I don't. You
have to be a more diverse act to hold my attention for that kind of time length. I mean, wildly diverse.
Like Metallica, I can go see Metallica for 2 hours. They have 2 hours worth of songs.
Well, you better, since the tickets are $300 a piece.
I'll be there too
for 3 fucking hours.
I'll be there too. But like, for example, like this weekend, my wife, like I said earlier, my wife and I, she's my ride or die. Like, we're flying out to Dallas actually this next weekend. This is time travel. We back in August. We flew out and saw some bands in Dallas. So we flew out to see Fugitive and 200 Stab Wounds, Tribal Gaze, and Spirit World. And I love all those bands. I love them. I love Spirit World. I don't want to see them play for an hour. I just don't.
Right.
Like, if you play for more than 30 minutes, I'm probably going to start being like, wrap it the fuck up.
Yeah.
You're not that sick.
Yeah.
Like, let's be good. And so for us, like, we definitely have that ethos of like a 20, maybe, like, if we start talking about playing 10 songs in a set, like, Mike, our drummer's getting pissed. He's like, what are you guys doing?
Yeah.
Like,
I get it.
Like, I'm blasting back here.
Get
like,
up,
I'm not trying
yeah.
to play for an hour.
Yeah. Get up here, get it done, get the fuck out of here, move your equipment.
If people
let
want
the next
more,
person
good.
play. Yeah, exactly.
And
watch us play the next show. I love that attitude.
Exactly. And like
sure.
in our songs, it's kind of the same way. Like, if it starts getting over that, if we're hitting 4 minutes on a track, what are we doing? Because like, that's to me, that's like, if you listen to like new Metallica, for example, that's to me the curse of new Metallica is like, stop writing 8-minute long songs. Like, your shit's not that sick. Like, stop.
Yeah.
Now there's bands that can pull that off. Like, I'm not saying that's impossible. Like the new Cattle Decap stuff. Like, there's some songs that go into the 5 and 6 minute territory.
So great.
But I'm not Cattle Decap, and neither are you. So stop.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, are you as
let
good?
it happen.
It's like a flow chart, right? Are you as good as Cattle Decap? Yes. Okay. Should you write a 6-minute song? Probably still fucking no. But if the answer started off as no, you're not as good as Cattle Decap, then stop.
Yeah. I get
no one
that.
wants to listen to 3 minutes of a song. It's good.
Yeah.
It's good. And like, so we have songs that are straight up 2 minutes and 30 seconds.
That's good.
But they fuck and they're
done.
good. And like, it's a good song. It doesn't need anything more. Like I said, not overthinking and not over massaging something and being like, well, man. And it is hard sometimes because you write a riff and you're like, God, that riff is sick. It just doesn't. But if it's better for the song to not repeat it again or to only play it for 4 measures, then you just play it for 4 measures and you just realize it's not that precious. I'm going to write a whole bunch more sick riffs in my life. It'll be okay.
Sure.
Well, I got 2 more questions for you. Do you got any questions, Nick?
Not off the top of my head. I'm just feeding off y'all.
Okay.
I'm here.
Tell us about the future of Pain Divine. Like, I know we got an EP coming out sometime in this pod. Like I said, it's going to release.
Hopefully it's out already. Hopefully it's already out.
When this pod comes out. So make sure you guys, if you listen to this pod, make sure the first thing you do is go listen to that. What about
We're the
future?
Adversary EP. Rep that shit.
Okay, so you guys are going to be just playing some shows off of this? You guys are just going to be just doing what you do, fitting it in where you can get it in, and...
So here's the thing. So in this, I'm glad this podcast could not have been a better time. Like, I'm actually working with his name's Brett. He's the singer in Snake Out. So Brett, he's done a lot in the hardcore scene, punk rock scene. He was in a band called Prison Suicide back in the day. He was in a band called Tall Ships.
Oh, I know Tall Ships.
Yep, and he's just always been doing it. So he's the guy who's responsible for Sweatfest.
Okay.
If you guys are familiar with that, Sweatfest is mostly
Nick
hardcore.
Nick wasn't in the band. Well, Luke.
Originally, Luke Fortin. Shout out Luke, reinventing yesterday. Indrid, much love. He started Sweatfest way back in the day, and so Brett wanted to kind of honor that legacy and like kind of a hat tip to like when Muskegon really had it going on, which right now it's popping off, but there's just, I think right now West Michigan or Muskegon lacks a structure sometimes, and like that's the problem. But like that's my point I'm getting to is so he's doing Sweatfest now. He does a lot to book bands. I've done some to book bands. I brought some stuff in. There's a guy, Luke, at Free Space. Shout out Luke. He's been booking some sick shows. He just announced a show. This is time traveling now, but he's bringing 200 Stab Wounds and Snuffed on Sight to Pyramid Scheme.
Okay.
We are playing a show with Gates to Hell and Sentenced to Die. Super sick bands. Like he's just given us. He's really good at what he does. And Brett and I just want to do our part. Brett's really good at what he does. So we're working on something called Cold Fade Collective. And what that essentially is it's not about me and Brett. It's not about us. It's about bringing sick bands to West Michigan. It's about booking sick shows. It's because I'm old enough to remember when there would be 3 shows in Muskegon in one day.
Yeah.
And they were all packed. There could be a show at this hall, at this bar, at this club, and there'd be huge turnouts to all of it. That's not so much the case anymore. But, there's kind of a resurgence going on. Fruitport Band Shell. When's the last time there was a show there? There's shows there again.
Right.
There's shows going on. There's kids. There's bands. There's people that want to do this stuff. And for me, like, keeping to the theme of Metal Maniacs, something that I've struggled with is it feels like the metal scene and metal community is so fragmented. It seems like there's this band, and they're just kind of doing their own thing. Like there's no scene. They're just a band, and they're playing shows sometimes. And there's some sick bands. There's bands from Kalamazoo like Necrium. They're super sick.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of dope bands, and I would love to start to organize that better and to bring it together. So like, hey, like there is a metal scene. There is a metal community. Like when there's a metal show, there's a huge turnout for it.
Yeah.
But right now it feels like that's much more tilted towards the hardcore scene. Like the hardcore scene kind of has that plan and structure and organization, whereas it seems like the metal scene, it really just everyone's kind of fending for themselves and figuring it out. And I brought Mutilatred to Turnstiles, awesome turnout, awesome show. By the time this podcast has come out, but I brought a band called Hanging Fortress from Toledo. I brought them to Skeletones. Super sick band. But that's my goal right now. Is I just want to. I'm finding these sick bands there's so many good bands right now, and I just want to bring them to West Michigan. I want to show them that there's people here. It's worth making the trek up here. Don't keep bypassing us for Fort Wayne. Don't keep bypassing us for Detroit. Don't keep bypassing us for Chicago, because people here are fucking hungry for it. And I can tell you right now, if we had a consistent, like I said, shout out to Luke at Free Space because he's good at what he does. But that's more. It definitely skews a little more towards punk and hardcore. If we did the same thing for metal, if there was a platform like that for metal, it would go off. I mean, like you said, you went to Upheaval. It was packed, I'm sure.
Dude, it was insane.
I mean, Sanguisugabog plays Pyramid Scheme. It's Sanguisugabog playing with Internal Bleeding and very obscure bands. Pyramid Scheme was packed.
I bet.
Packed.
Oh, yeah. Well, that band
Sardines.
is quite big, too.
They are, but still, Sanguisugabog, I mean, the fact that they could play Grand Rapids and it's packed, it just tells me there's a hunger, there's a craving for it. But I think it's more like, it's like you kind of said, there's people that are a little bit more passive, and they're not diehards. I think the hardcore scene has a little bit more of that, like, oh no, we want the sickest thing. We dive in, like the more obscure the better. And I think metal sometimes it's not so much that all the time. It's a little bit more of that passive listener because it is a little more popular, I would say.
Yeah.
And I think just making it so, hey, those 400 people that showed up to Sanguisugabog, why aren't they? Let's roll out for the Pain Divine show. Let's roll out for a band like Infinite Design. Let's roll out for those shows and pack them up.
Yeah. Right.
And I think it's all there. It just the pieces have to be put together. So hey, if you're a metal band and you're looking to play some sick shows, hit me up. Like I said, check out Cold Fade Collective. Hit me up. I'm all about. And if you're from out of town, I'll give you a place to stay. I'll give you a hot tub to chill out in afterwards.
Nice.
And we'll take care of you. So come up to West Michigan, and I guarantee you, like, you will not be disappointed. Talk to Mutilatred, talk to any of the bands that play here. It holds its own against Chicago and Detroit, I can tell you right now.
Nice.
Wow.
All right. Well, that's badass. And
that's huge.
Obviously, we're going to have you on and in the future again, especially if you start fleshing that out a little more, and we can talk more about that. And
I'd love to. Anytime.
The more Pain Divine does. Before we wrap this up, we are keeping it in the Metal Maniacs theme. You told me you played in a rock and roll band, which was bullshit. So...
Fuck.
It's called Snake Out. That's not rock and roll, homie. That's like hardcore fucking punk. That's like not right. You said rock and roll. I was thinking you were playing some fucking I don't even know what rock and roll is, but it wasn't rock and roll. You're like, I'm playing this rock and roll band
to be honest,
too,
but
but
when
like, I mean, maybe some of the riffs or whatever, but like the singer's got just angst like a motherfucker, and he's like screaming half the time in the mic. I'm like, this is pissed off. This ain't rock and roll, bro. He's like, I'm playing this rock and roll band. I was thinking you just out there fucking rocking it or rolling. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Everything I write, I just channel Talking Heads, so it's rock. It is rock and roll to me.
Yeah. Okay. Well, fair enough. But you want to.
How is this keeping with the Metal Maniacs theme?
Well, I was
Now we're
just
talking about rock and roll. I'm going to talk about John Fogerty in a second.
Well, I was just saying, keeping with the theme, you said it was rock and roll. It's not necessarily rock and roll to me, but
it's definitely. I mean, I think what
I want you to speak on what you're doing. So we've talked about Pain Divine.
Yeah.
We know you're a metal dude, whatever. We know you're death
I
metal.
proved
We
it.
know
I'm not a poser.
Yeah. So save this.
I
to your.
bleed death metal.
He only listens to grind. That's it. That's all he listens to is grind, just all the time. So we've established that. But he plays in a rock band. I just wanted you to be able. Yeah, I just kind of wanted you to be able to speak on that too, because I know that's something else that you're doing. So you're here. It's all about you today. So.
Yeah, no, Snake Out, super sick band. Kind of like everything I said about Pain Divine. I feel like I could say about Snake Out as far as I trust the dudes. They're all like dedicated. They're all passionate about what they do. It's definitely like a band in a hardcore, kind of hardcore adjacent. Like we definitely draw influences from bands like Drug Church, Trapped Under Ice, Turnstile, Angel Dust. Definitely some bands that are. They're hardcore, but like we're not trying to be a hardcore band per se. We definitely lean more into being more melodic, more alternative. Like to me, it's like I'll listen to some like Alice in Chains and might be like, that's a cool riff. Like I'm gonna like, how can I kind of merge that? Or maybe more punky.
Okay.
So there's some bands like Scowl, just some more punk bands that definitely have that alternative vibe. Like, you know, because for us, like the hardcore thing's been done a lot, and there's a lot of guys that are doing it better than we probably could. And so it's just kind of more, it's fun, you know, like we play shows. It's so different for me because I go from playing in Pain Divine and playing death metal to playing in this. And it's like we play and people are dancing or they're like smiling. Yeah. You know, it's weird because like in death metal, you don't fucking smile. Yeah. You know, like you're scowling. And if you're not scowling, then my riffs suck.
Yeah, that's true.
In this band, it's like people are smiling and dancing and just having a good time. And it's a trip sometimes, but it's super cool. But it's because the same thing, success. Like we're playing with a bunch of cool bands. We're meeting a bunch of cool people. And, you know, we've done some weekend runs. We've played out in Toledo. We've played out in Cleveland. We've played out in Chicago, Indiana, Kentucky. We've played a bunch of different places. So it's been cool just getting to meet people and know people and, you know, share what the fuck we're doing with people. So, and those guys are all kind of the same thing. They're all in the same mindset. They're all on the same wavelength. Like we're ride or die. Like we're 100% like, I can trust them. When we have band practice, they're going to be there. When we write a part, they're going to bring some sick contributions to it. But yeah, to your point, it's not rock and roll, but it's definitely in the hardcore punk vein of music, but with a little bit of alternative. There's definitely like the Smiths, like some stuff like that. You get into some like goth or like some stuff like that. Like the Smiths are definitely like an influence. Yeah. But it's not the Smiths.
Yeah. I've heard. I listened to the songs that you guys got out or whatever, and then I've noticed some of the riffs and the guitar parts are a little leaning maybe more towards the rock and roll, if you would say that, but just the vocalist is pretty pissed. So, I mean, it kind of brings this like angst to it, and it's just reminds me of some hardcore, you know? So,
for sure.
So how does, we're going to be wrapping up here shortly in the next 10 or so, but just real quick, how does that kind of fit in then with Pain Divine? Is there like a structure of importance as far as, like priority for you, or how does that all work? Because now you're working with two bands that are doing a bunch of shit and doing multiple shows, and
seems like a lot of logistics to balance and juggle. Like,
there is,
and also if you can add this into your answer, what is your so Pain Divine sounds like this is my thing, this is my baby. I'm trying to book these shows. We're trying to do all this. Now, Snake Out, something that you're like, all right, guys, you handle all this shit. I'm going to show up and play rock and roll, help you out with a little bit of recording, and just let me know when to show up type of thing. Or is this another thing where it's like, I'm super passionate about this, I'm trying to book all these shows too? Because that just seems like it's a lot to have two bands that are doing that, you know?
Yeah, so you mostly nailed it, honestly. Like, so I would say Pain Divine is definitely like the, like, you gonna make it there? You all right? Are you good? That water just fucked you up? Here at Metal Maniacs, we only drink the hardest of fucking water.
Yeah, for a straight edge guy, that fucking water is tough, man.
Man, that's some good shit. That's some good water.
Good quality H2O.
Minerals caught in my throat.
This shit's got so many.
I drink
so
that
much
unfiltered shit.
I still got my edge. I'm hard as fuck. But no, like, so it did start. I mean, Pain Divine is my priority, but you know, when you're passionate about shit, like it's hard to put constraints on things. It's hard to say like, well, this is my passion. So they're both my passion, and I love both of them. And Snakeout kind of started off as it was meant to be a side project. So Brett was in prison suicide at the time, and it was his side. We all just kind of wanted to do something that was a little bit off the norm. It was out of our comfort zones a little bit, because I never want to shrink my comfort zone. I never want to get to this point where I'm stagnant or irrelevant or just playing the same old shit. You kind of referenced that there's some people who it's like, you know, they forgot that there's metal that came out after Dimebag died. You know, they're still just they're like, yeah, man, walk fucks. You know, those albums are sick, but there's so much stuff out there, and so I never wanted to stagnate or like close myself off. And I'm like, Brett hit me and a couple guys up. Shout out to Lo-Fi Horror guy Eric. He played drums in it originally. He you know, it was just like, hey, let's do this different thing. Let's do some more alternative. Let's do just something different. It's way out of my comfort zone. I never have ever been in a band that's this mellow or this not aggressive.
Yeah, okay.
And so it's definitely, but it's evolved. It's went from being prison suicide has since dissolved. It's really became more of like, it's a full blown band. It's not just a side project. And so with that, I've kind of evolved with it. Like, it's not my side project. Like, I'm like, it's a project.
Yeah, it's something that you do also.
But I definitely, you know, it is definitely like, I would say I am more integral to Pain Divine. Like, I'm doing a lot more. I play a larger role. Whereas in Snakeout, I'm very fortunate that, you know, we've got a guy like Sam who plays guitar. Sam Rotschafer takes amazing photography. His live stuff, in my opinion, is unfuckwithable. Like, it's better than any, like, no offense to everyone else out there, but his shit is like on like a national stage, in my opinion, where a lot of people are just, you know, it's a hobby. And Sam just his ability with media and stuff like that, and he manages a lot of our social media, so I don't have to do that. Yeah, that's awesome. Brett does all the booking and has all those connections, so he handles that. But you know, it's not I don't view it as a side project. Sometimes I'm playing more gigs with Snakeout than I am with Pain Divine. And it does become a logistic. It can be difficult to balance it all, but I think we all understand, and really it's just first come, first serve. If Snakeout booked a weekend run, then I'm doing that. Then that's a blackout date for Pain Divine. Like, we can't book any shows that weekend. And everyone understands that. You know,
everybody has to be cool with it. It's like being in a band is being married to like 3-4 other people, however many members you got. But now you're in 2 bands, and now you've just married 2 fucking bands together.
What are we in Utah?
You got 10 dudes married together.
I mean, yes, it's
I'm married to 10 dudes, and I love it.
If you learned anything today, this is what you.
This is the takeaway. So. This is our wrap up here. But no, but it definitely. I mean, I write stuff in Snakeout. I'd say, you know, Sam writes a lot. He probably writes a little more than I do, but I contributed quite a bit from that. But I would still definitely say Pain Divine is like the band, but Snakeout is not a side project. Like, Snakeout is also a band that
this brings up a question for me now. You said you're writing for both bands, right? So do you write with intent when you sit down and pick up that guitar? Are you thinking you're feeling Pain Divine when you start writing, or are you feeling like, you know, I've had this riff in my head, it feels like it goes with something Snakeout might prefer, and I haven't listened to enough to know that, like, how different. Like,
they're very different, so that's a bonus, because I think if there was a lot of, it does become hard. Like, I don't want to be in that position where I'm like cherry picking riffs for a band, because then it almost feels like then like you are preferring one band, because like then if you're like, well, this is super sick, so I got to use this in Pain Divine. That one's okay, I'll use that. Like, I want all of my riffs to be top notch. Like, this shit.
So the style is enough difference.
It's so different. Like, I mean, in the tune, like in Pain Divine, we tuned to B standard. In Snakeout, it's E standard.
Okay.
I play a Telecaster in Snakeout. I don't play a Telecaster in Pain Divine. Like, it's very different, and that's also part of it. Like my natural inclination really truly is Pain Divine. Like, when I'm sitting down and practicing guitar, playing guitar, like I'm learning. I'm learning like, you know, Open Casket by Death. I'm not necessarily sitting down and learning Talking Heads songs or learning, you know, Trapped Under Ice songs. I'm learning death metal songs. And so my natural just sitting down and riffing is gonna be Pain Divine. But every now and then I'll listen to like there's the new Scowl EP that dropped this, I think it was this year still. Like that, like I'll listen to that and I just get inspired, and I'll be like, I'm gonna sit down and play some Snakeout. So with Snakeout, it's much more like when I'm feeling inspired.
Okay.
Whereas with Pain Divine, it's just my day-to-day grind.
Okay.
Just pick it up, hit record, something like that. Just
Yeah.
like immediately capture what comes out of you. Like,
Yep,
just let it
for
roll for 40 minutes. Yeah.
Yep.
That's cool.
All right, man. Well, we're going to wrap this podcast up. I do want to say, is there any last things you want to say? Where can we find you? Where are we looking for you at?
The best spot, really, and just to check, I basically live on the Pain Divine Instagram. Like that I almost, like when I go to shows and stuff, that I'm filming bands on that. I'm checking stuff out on that. I mostly live on that, so just check out Pain Divine on Instagram.
Okay.
I believe it's Pain Divine MI. Is the tag, but if you just search up Pain Divine on any social media, it'll pop up. You see the little circle PD logo, so check that out. Snake Out for sure. Snake Out MI, I believe, is the handle. But same thing. If you search up Snake Out, you'll find Snake Out. It's not a secret. We got the little devil. Snake Out made me do it right here. Little devil logo here. Just check it out on Instagram. Like, honestly, just listen to the music. Like, I don't even give a fuck about the social media.
Yeah.
Go on to Spotify, Apple Music, whatever you do to listen to music, and listen to our music, because that to me is what really matters. I could give a shit less if you follow us on social media or whatever. I'm not a big social media guy. Everything I'm not making memes and shit.
Yeah,
I'm posting. We got a show coming up. We just played a show. It's all music related.
Yeah.
I'm not here for the LOLs and the laughs and hey, like, look at this funny thing we're doing. Like, fuck that shit. Like, no one gives a fuck about me that much. Like, we got some sick riffs. Here they are. So really, just listen to the music. Hop on listen to it on Spotify. Come to a show. That's even better. Fuck streaming. Even come to a show.
No
get
doubt.
in the pit and bang your head and just and listen to some shit and come up and say hello. We might seem like old scary death metal dudes, but we're the nice. In my opinion, we're the nicest dudes. We'll talk to anybody. If you even just want to say, hey, your band sucks, but like you got a cool shirt on, let's talk about the shirt I'm wearing. Like, let's just hang out. Like, that's the best way, but any of those things work.
All right, cool, man. Well, I appreciate you being on the Metal Maniacs podcast.
Good to see you, Jeremy.
Appreciate you guys. Thanks so much.
Yep, nice to see you. And until then, keep it metal, motherfuckers.
Metal Maniacs.